Like you, I'm sad and I'm angry about the rise in hate crimes against Asian American and Pacific Islanders in these United States this past year. And at times it's felt like the world has turned their back against the AAPI community as we struggle for survival. And on a bad day, I wondered if God had abandoned us. But of course, God had not. But you can see why I think she has. The senseless tragedy of the spa shootings in Atlanta, the 91-year-old man shoved to the ground in Oakland's Chinatown, the 89-year-old Chinese woman slapped and set on fire by two people in Brooklyn, the Chinese man walking home from work who was stabbed in the back on Worth Street, the two Asian American women waiting for the bus in San Francisco's Tenderloin district attacked and stabbed. And these, my friends, are just a few examples. This terror and violence levied against us isn't anything new. When I reflect on some of the history of the AAPI community, I also must remember others of us who died because of hate. And I'm thinking about Vincent Chin. Vincent Chin was beaten to death in 1982 by two auto workers who thought Chin was Japanese and that the Japanese were stealing jobs from American auto workers. Two white men responsible for Chin's death were caught. Both men received no prison sentence, were fined $3,000. My friends, say his name, Vincent Chin. Vincent Chin. And I'm also thinking about Danny Chen, who was a member of the U.S. Army, who, while serving in Afghanistan, committed suicide after being racially hazed and bullied by his comrades and the command staff. And I'm thinking about Harry Liu, nephew of Congresswoman Judy Chu of California, who was a member of the Marines, who, like Chen, committed suicide in 2011 while in Afghanistan. Liu was hazed by his fellow Marines. As a result of Liu's death, Congressman Chu introduced a bill which would ban hazing in the military. My friends, say their names with me. Danny Chen and Harry Liu, say their names. It goes back even further than that, from the beginning of the Asian American experience. Chinese laborers who came to the United States to build the railroads were victimized by other laborers because they felt threatened by the unequally paid and hardworking Chinese. And in response to that fear, a series of laws were enacted prohibiting the immigration of first Chinese, then all Asian people. In 1942, people of Japanese descent were placed in internment camps following the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. Japanese people were uprooted and their livelihoods taken away, and they were carted off like cattle to live in unfamiliar places. Yet, Japanese Americans, though in internment camps, served in the U.S. military in World War II. Like the proud Japanese Americans, my father also served in the U.S. Army in World War II, and he was a member of the troops that invaded Normandy. Let me tell you about my dad, Herbert K. Moy, first-generation Chinese American, born in Minnesota in 1921. He grew up in China and returned to the United States at the age of 19. He joined the U.S. Army as an infantryman. He was a member of the U.S. troops that invaded Normandy. He was on the shores of Omaha Beach. After the war, my father held stereotypical jobs that Chinese men did. He was a waiter in restaurants, and he worked in laundries until 1975. He was a member of the Laundry Workers Union until one day someone there called him a Chinaman. My father walked out of the union hall, never turned back, never looked back. He was, for our family, a tree planted by the streams of water. He worked hard for us. He fought heroically for this country that never accepted him for who he was, much less recognized his heroism. My relationship with my father was extremely complicated. We barely spoke. He expected his kids, all three of us, to excel academically. However, I could not live up to his expectations due to what I later found out before starting grad school was an undiagnosed learning disability, which made learning for me difficult. For me, growing up, academics always was a thorn on my side. My mother, was forever being told by my teachers that I was not performing to my potential. Well, let's see, I'm 61 and I'm still trying to figure out what that means. I think that words like that from educators do more harm than good. Also, a thorn in my side was from my Chinese church community, this time with the racist and ignorant remarks made about my non-Chinese friends. This is what ultimately forced me to leave this church and seek out churches that were multi, until I finally found Middle Church, the multiest church I could find. And when I arrived 22 years ago, there were 3 Asian people: Louis Liu, Jocelyn Liu, and myself. In these past times and these present times, resilient leaders rose up. They organized, they lifted up their voices, and through their partnership with God, they stood fast in the wind. Through the struggles of the last year, I have found my strength. I have found it when I decided to put my boots to the ground and join members of the Chinese community who are already out patrolling and protecting our elders in our community. I joined the Guardian Angels and the Chinatown Block Watch. I joined the ranks of those who dare to care and put their bodies on the line to protect the most vulnerable. Personally, I have been impressed and hopeful as I watch the young people rise up and lead the charge to help take care and protect the community. And I have found my voice as an accidental activist who not only helps patrol the streets, but also speaks for our people, both on national TV and at local rallies. Being part of this fight has brought me even closer to my community. The people of Chinatown have gotten used to seeing us patrolling the streets and wave at us and thank us as we pass by. Just seeing the smiles on the faces of our seniors makes the patrol all worthwhile. Like the trees planted by the waters, which the psalmist wrote about, the resilience of the AAPI community remains strong. Though we may be weary because of the continued hate and violence directed at us, we will not rest until we are treated justly. We will not give up. Sometimes even trees feel vulnerable. Though their roots are deep, though they are sturdy, they are vulnerable to the elements, vulnerable to the violent winds of hate and the onslaught of bigotry that batters them like hail on a stormy night. My hope for the future is that the younger members of the AAPI community will never forget where they came from, or the struggles that our elders endured to get us to where we are today. We need to continue to learn about our history, about our ancestors who went before us, and to be proud of who we are. And we must not stay silent or settle for what is happening. Instead, we need to raise our voices, show up, be seen, and not let up until everyone has a seat at the table. We will not be blown away into the winds like chaff. We will not bend and sway like the willow tree. We will stand strong because we stand together. Our roots fed by the same waters of justice. Family, we shall not be moved. Amen.